Let's talk about work. I mean, chances are you spend a huge portion of your waking life doing it.
It's a massive chunk of time, yeah.
And it's not just about, earning a living. The actual experience you have in your career,
Mm-hmm.
it profoundly shapes your overall well-being.
Definitely.
But if you try digging into what career well-being really means or how organizations are supposed to actually support it,
Mm.
well, you can quickly find yourself just lost in a sea of information.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get overwhelmed.
Well, that's exactly why you've shared this stack of sources with us, looking into career well-being and the role of organizational support.
Mm-hmm.
So our job in this deep dive is basically to cut through all that complexity, pull out the most essential ideas, and will help you get informed quickly and clearly on this really fundamental part of life.
Sounds like a plan.
Consider us your guides today, sort of sifting through this material, highlighting the important nuggets, and exploring why they should matter to you.
Ready when you are.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Indeed. It's a topic that impacts everyone, really, whether they've actively thought about it or not.
Right.
And the sources really drive home that because people spend such a significant portion of their lives at work, maybe, around a third,
Uh,
their career isn't just a job.
no.
It's a major influence on their entire sense of well-being.
Okay, so if it's that important,
Yeah.
how are the sources actually defining this idea of career well-being?
So the definition they provide is quite specific. It's described as an individual's long-term contentment with where their career is going.
Okay.
Their outcomes, achievements, how they navigate changes, and their feeling of suitable employability in today's pretty complex work landscape.
Employability.
But the crucial part they emphasize is that it's about subjective positive perceptions, how you feel, your sense of satisfaction and contentment about your career life.
Ah, okay. So it's less about the external stuff, maybe like a fancy job title or a big salary,
Exactly.
and more about the internal experience.
Precisely. And the sources suggest this internal state, this career well-being, shows up in three key areas for a person,
Like what?
like feeling connected and having a strong state of networking or social support, also experiencing a positive, affective state, basically, generally positive emotions,
Hmm.
and third, having a state of meaningfulness in their work. These are kind of like the internal signals.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just the tasks, but how it connects you, how it makes you feel, and whether it feels like it matters.
You've got it. And
Yeah.
this focus on positive feelings and states, well, it's part of a bigger shift in how we think about well-being generally.
Oh, how has that perspective changed?
Well, the sources contrast two main models. You've got the traditional disease model
Right.
that's historically dominated psychology and healthcare. It focuses on pathology, on identifying what's wrong, illness, burnout, stress, conflict, anxiety.
Okay, so looking for the problems, the deficits.
Right, with the goal of fixing it or treating it. But the newer perspective, which these sources highlight, is the positive psychology model.
And that does what differently?
It shifts the focus entirely. It looks at well-being and happiness itself. It's about understanding what makes people thrive, looking at outcomes like engagement, hope, meaning, job satisfaction, optimism. It's about building strengths, fostering growth, not just fixing problems.
So it's like moving from pathology to potential. Is that fair?
You can definitely see it that way. Yeah, it gives us a really different lens to look through when we examine things like career well-being.
And speaking of different lenses, the sources seem to explore a few distinct ideas about what a well-lived life, or maybe a well-lived career, might mean.
They do. They introduce a fascinating distinction, actually, that goes way back to ancient philosophy, hedonia versus eudaimonia.
Okay, those sound like heavyweight terms. What's the core difference there?
Hedonia is essentially about maximizing pleasure and avoiding pain.
Simple enough.
Think about pursuing things that make you feel good right now. Maybe a high salary just for the sake of it, easy tasks, a comfortable routine. The sources mention this can sometimes involve chasing more, superficial goals.
Okay. And the other one, eudaimonia.
Now, what's fascinating here is how eudaimonia offers a fundamentally different idea. It's about living well by developing your best potential,
Right.
pursuing meaningful goals that align with who you really are, putting in effort, finding intense involvement in activities you see as personally expressive. It's about the process of growth and purpose, not just that fleeting feeling of pleasure.
Okay, so hedonia is maybe more moment-to-moment feeling good, while eudaimonia is bigger picture, living a life with substance and purpose over time.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. One is about feeling good, the other is about doing good and being good in the sense of fulfilling your potential.
Got it.
And related to this, the sources also talk about subjective well-being, which we sort of touched on earlier.
Right, that's how individuals judge their own life quality.
Yes. It includes your balance of positive versus negative moods over time, your overall life satisfaction, and how satisfied you are with specific parts of your life, work, family, health, whatever. And the sources point out it's influenced by both bottom-up factors like external events that happen to you
Right, situation.
and top-down processes,
Right.
which are your internal filters, like your personality traits. And they note these can be surprisingly strong predictors of your overall subjective well-being.
Huh. So your inherent outlook really colors how you experience things.
It certainly can. Another key idea the sources cover is the broaden and build theory of positive emotion.
Okay, broaden and build.
Yeah. This theory suggests that positive emotions, things like joy, interest, contentment, they aren't just nice side effects. They actually do something important.
What do they do?
They broaden your momentary thought-action repertoire. Basically, they expand the range of thoughts and actions that come to mind. So instead of narrowing your focus like negative emotions, that fight or flight thing,
Sure.
positive emotions open you up. New ideas, experiences, connections.
So feeling good actually makes you more open and creative.
Exactly. And this broadening effect over time helps you build lasting personal resources.
Like what kind of resources?
Things like physical health, intellectual abilities, social connections, psychological resilience. It's seen as really central to psychological growth and flourishing. It helps you see the bigger picture, be more adaptable.
Wow, that's powerful. Positive feelings aren't just the goal. They're actually a tool for growth and resilience.
Absolutely. Now, to get into the, let's say, deeper building blocks of psychological health, the sources reference psychological well-being as defined by researchers Rife and Singer.
Okay. This raises an important question then. If you wanted to really break down what makes a person psychologically healthy, what are the core dimensions these sources point to? What are we talking about?
According to this model, the one presented in the sources, there are 6 key dimensions.
6, okay.
First is autonomy, feeling self-determined, independent, able to resist social pressures. Then environmental mastery, effectively managing your life and the world around you. Personal growth, seeing yourself as developing, open to new experiences, realizing your potential.
Right.
Positive relations with others, having warm, trusting relationships. Understanding that give and take. Purpose in life, having goals, a sense of meaning, both past and present.
Okay.
And finally, self-acceptance, having a positive attitude towards yourself, acknowledging your strengths and your weaknesses.
Those sound like really fundamental components for feeling centered and capable in the world, don't they?
They really do form a comprehensive picture. And when we put these different aspects of well-being together, the sources introduce Key's mental health continuum.
Okay, so it's not just a simple binary like mentally healthy or mentally ill.
No, definitely not. It's very much a spectrum.
Right.
On one end, you have languishing, feeling empty, stagnant, lacking energy or purpose, kind of meh.
Yeah, we all felt that sometimes.
And on the other end is flourishing, which the sources describe as a pattern of high positive feelings and high positive functioning in life.
So feeling good and doing well.
Exactly. And where you fall on the spectrum is determined by your scores across 3 areas: emotional, psychological, and social well-being.
Could you just quickly remind us what those 3 cover again?
Sure. Emotional well-being is basically how often you feel positive emotions and feel satisfied with your life overall. Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Psychological well-being are those 6 dimensions we just discussed: autonomy, growth, purpose, and so on.
Got it.
And social well-being is about how you function and thrive within your social world. Feeling accepted, believing society has potential, finding meaning in social interactions, feeling like you contribute, feeling integrated.
Right. So to be truly flourishing, according to this view, you need to score well across how you feel emotionally, how you function psychologically as an individual, and how you connect with and contribute to society. That's quite holistic.
That's the full picture they paint, yes. And the sources then take these broader concepts and apply them directly to the workplace. They detail the components of flourishing at work.
Okay, so how does that translate into the office or, wherever you work?
Well, it includes things like high job satisfaction and experiencing positive emotions while you're actually at work.
Makes sense.
It includes high work engagement, that feeling of energy, dedication, and absorption in what you're doing, being in the zone.
Yeah.
It means finding purpose and meaningful work. It's about experiencing self-determination, feeling autonomy, competence, and relatedness in your job.
Those basic needs.
Exactly. It involves continuous learning and strong social well-being at work, so feeling connected and supported by colleagues and the organization itself.
That gives us a really clear picture of what a thriving employee experience actually looks like. But I
Mhm.
mean, you can't just wish your way into flourishing, can you? What actually sets the stage for this? What helps it happen?
Exactly right. You can't just flick a switch. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources dive into the antecedents. These are the factors or conditions that come before flourishing and either help it along or get in the way.
Ah, the enablers and hinderers.
Precisely. And they can be individual traits or things in the work environment itself.
Okay, let's look at some of the most impactful ones the sources highlight. What stands out?
Well, a really significant one they mention is person-environment fit.
Okay.
This is the idea that when there's a good match between who you are, your values, skills, personality, needs, and what your job requires, or what the organizational culture is like,
Yeah.
you're much more likely to experience psychological meaningfulness and feel supported. It lets you bring more of your authentic self to work.
Being able to be genuinely yourself seems foundational, doesn't it?
It really is. And related to that is strengths use.
Using your strengths.
Yes, the sources emphasize that using your authentic, energizing capabilities at work is strongly linked to higher well-being, increased meaning, and greater engagement.
So it's about identifying what you're good at and what actually lights you up,
Exactly.
and finding ways to use that energy at work.
Precisely. It's not just competence, but using skills that feel natural and energizing, like you said.
Makes sense. What else?
Role clarity is another practical one. Just knowing exactly what's expected of you, how your work fits into the bigger goals, what your contribution is, that provides a crucial sense of meaning and direction. Reduces anxiety, too.
Sure. Clear expectations.
Now, looking at the other side, overload in personal resources is a huge factor mentioned.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. The sources explain that overload happens when the demands placed on you sheer volume of tasks, maybe the emotional toll, time pressure, exceed your capacity or the resources you have available.
Right?
And when demands chronically outweigh your resources, whether they're physical or emotional, it inevitably leads to exhaustion, disengagement, and pushes you towards languishing.
That makes painful sense. You just can't pour from an empty cup.
Right, exactly. And a very modern antecedent the sources explore is technostress and digital wellness.
Ah, technostress. Tell me more.
Technostress is defined as the stress people feel when they struggle to adapt to or cope with digital technologies.
Okay.
The sources list causes like constant connectivity. They call it techno-invasion.
I know that feeling.
Right. Or having too much information coming at you, techno-overload. Or maybe feeling insecure about your digital skills.
Oh, we've probably all felt that techno overload or invasion at some point. They get
Ah.
relentless sometimes.
Absolutely. The sources connect this directly to well-being, noting it can lead to strain and stress. And they introduce digital wellness as the necessary counterpoint.
So being intentional about tech use.
Yeah, the need to promote intentional, healthy habits around technology. There's even a link made in the sources to recent discussions around quiet quitting,
Oh, interesting.
suggesting it could potentially be a response to this kind of digital exhaustion.
That's a really relevant connection. Technology, meant to help us, can actually hinder our well-being if we don't manage it consciously.
It's a key challenge today, definitely. The sources also mention the influence of the inherent nature of the job itself.
How so?
They reference classic job characteristics, things like skill variety, task significance, autonomy, feedback, and how these shape your experience of meaning, responsibility, and understanding your impact.
The core job design elements.
Exactly. And they layer in 21st century aspects, too,
Like what?
highlighting the importance of the social context of work and the opportunity for pro-social contribution.
Meaning.
The chance to feel like your work actually benefits others or society in some way.
Ah, feeling like you're making a positive difference. That's powerful.
Exactly. Job security, or rather the lack of it, the subjective fear of losing your job, is understandably listed as a factor.
Of course.
It can significantly lower commitment and increase stress. And in a world of constant change, the sources link this back to the importance of employability, feeling confident you could find another role if you had to.
Right, that feeling of capability.
Mm-hmm. The quality of your supervisor and coworker relations is also paramount.
Huge one.
Absolutely. Supportive leaders and colleagues help meet those fundamental human needs: autonomy, competence, feeling connected. They foster trust, belonging, and can buffer against stress. Poor relationships? Well, they're a major source of strain.
So your relationships at work aren't just a nice to have, they're actually central to your well-being there.
Fundamentally, your personal work beliefs also play a role. How you view the nature and purpose of work itself shapes your experience.
How do the sources break that down?
They differentiate between viewing work as just a job focused mainly on the money, or a career investing for advancement and status, or a calling.
A calling.
Yeah, where the work is almost inseparable from your life. It's intrinsically fulfilling. The sources note that employers often hope to foster a calling orientation because it correlates strongly with meaning and engagement.
My dad.
Although they don't sugarcoat it, achieving a true calling isn't easy or always possible for everyone.
Right. So it's partly the external factors, the environment, and partly your internal mindset about work that shapes your experience.
Precisely. Advancement opportunities, access to training, chances to grow, promotion paths also play a role. They contribute to feelings of security and future potential. Even remuneration, while maybe not a direct driver of deep psychological needs, is mentioned. It becomes impactful if it's perceived as unfair or not linked to performance, creating dissatisfaction.
Okay. And we can't ignore the constant juggle, right? Work and life outside it.
Absolutely not. Work-home interaction is a significant antecedent discussed.
How does that play out?
The sources present two views. One is role scarcity.
Okay.
That's where managing multiple roles like parent, employee, partner feels like a drain, leading to conflict and exhaustion, too much demand, not enough resources.
The classic struggle.
Right. But then there's role enhancement. This is the idea that involvement in multiple roles can actually provide resources, skills, perspectives, support networks that can enrich your performance and well-being in both spheres.
So they can feed each other positively, potentially.
Exactly. So whether that work-life balance feels like a source of stress or a source of strength can depend on how those roles interact and support each other.
It's complex.
It really is. But understanding these different factors helps explain why some people genuinely thrive at work, while others feel constantly drained or disconnected.
Okay, so we've looked at what flourishing means and what helps make it happen. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. What are the actual tangible benefits when people do flourish at work? What happens then?
The outcomes.
Yeah.
Yes, the sources list a really compelling array of positive results.
Lay them on me.
Okay, so for the individual, flourishing employees report higher job satisfaction. They experience more positive emotions generally.
Good start.
And they show better cognitive function, including increased creative thinking.
So that positive feeling isn't just pleasant. It literally makes you think better and be more innovative. Is that what they're saying?
That's what the research presented suggests, yes. They also tend to exhibit more organizational citizenship behavior.
Which means?
Things like willingly helping colleagues, volunteering for extra tasks, speaking up constructively, basically going above and beyond their core job description.
Like being a genuinely positive force in the workplace community, contributing more broadly.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. They're described as more sociable, energetic, cooperative, and they tend to have richer social networks and support systems, both inside and outside work.
Okay.
They also show greater flexibility, they're more original in their ideas, and demonstrate higher resilience when facing challenges or setbacks.
Those are incredibly valuable traits in any team or organization. You'd want people like that.
Absolutely. And the benefits go even deeper. The sources indicate that flourishing individuals tend to have better physical health.
Really? How so?
Stronger immune systems, even potentially living longer lives, according to some studies mentioned.
Wow.
And at work specifically, they show higher involvement, they experience less burnout, have lower rates of absenteeism, and are less likely to leave the organization.
Less turnover. That's huge for companies.
Massive. They also handle organizational change more effectively and feel a greater sense of commitment to their workplace.
Okay, so fostering employee well-being and flourishing. It isn't just a nice thing for companies to do. It has direct, powerful impacts on productivity, innovation, retention, and overall organizational success.
Absolutely. It really creates a win-win situation. The sources even suggest managers who cultivate a positive emotional climate might receive more rewards and positive evaluations themselves. It suggests positivity can create a virtuous cycle.
That's fascinating. So knowing all these benefits, how can organizations actually support this? How can they promote this state of flourishing and well-being? What are the interventions?
Right, the practical side. The sources cover actions at both the organizational level and the individual level.
Okay, what can organizations do?
They list a range of interventions, things like using assessment and evaluation tools to actually gauge well-being levels, offering coaching programs, facilitating regular career conversations between managers and employees, thoughtfully redesigning jobs to make them more fulfilling, tapping into those job characteristics we talked about, actively nurturing digital well-being policies and culture.
Important these days.
Very. Training leaders to be more empowering, improving communication and feedback channels, fostering employee empowerment generally, and investing in broader career development initiatives.
Okay, those are things the employer can take on.
Yeah.
What about what individuals can do for themselves? Is it all in the company?
No, definitely not. The sources mention several individual strategies, too.
Such as?
Cultivating positive practices like gratitude or positive thinking exercises, actively investing in and nurturing your social connections. Relationships matter.
Right.
Developing skills for managing stress, hardships, trauma, practicing being present and engaged in daily life, things like savoring positive moments or committing to meaningful goals.
Mindfulness stuff.
Yeah, related to that. And crucially, taking care of your physical and mental health through exercise, healthy lifestyle, maybe mindfulness, or even spirituality. They even mention the slightly counterintuitive idea of acting happy as sometimes being a way to actually shift your internal state.
Huh. Fake it till I make it, kind of.
A little bit, perhaps, in terms of behavior influencing feeling.
Okay, so it really sounds like a partnership then. The organization creates the conditions, the supportive environment,
Yeah.
and the individual engages with practices to build their own well-being within that.
Exactly. And to describe this partnership and the whole context it happens in, the sources introduce a useful concept: the organizational career development ecosystem.
An ecosystem. Okay, what does that entail? Sounds complex.
Think of it as an interconnected system. It includes the organization, yes, and the individual, but also the broader market forces and the huge influence of technology in this digital age.
Right, it's all linked.
Exactly. And its purpose is basically to align the business goals with supporting employee needs. Needs like continuous learning,
Right.
career mobility inside or even outside the company, agility, adaptability, personal growth, all that stuff.
And the sources mentioned that within this digital ecosystem, there's a big shift happening, where skills are becoming maybe more important than just traditional job titles for matching people to work.
That's a key dynamic they highlight within this ecosystem, yes. It means developing a broad, transferable skill set is becoming crucial, both for your own career security as an individual and for the organization's ability to adapt its workforce quickly to changing needs.
Makes sense. What are the benefits of thinking about it this way as an ecosystem?
Well, for the organization, the sources highlight things like gaining a competitive edge, getting better at attracting and keeping talent, tapping into employee creativity, boosting commitment, engagement, productivity, and fostering greater organizational resilience, basically making the whole operation stronger.
And for individuals?
For individuals, it means getting access to things like career planning support, coaching, education, training, chances to reskill for new roles, and help building external resources like strong professional networks or even financial literacy.
So practical support.
Yes. And the sources also note that establishing this kind of ecosystem and culture of career development aligns with things like legislative requirements and professional standards, mentioning the South African context specifically, with examples like the Employment Equity Act and SABPP standards.
Ah, so it's not just a nice theoretical model. There are practical and even legal drivers behind it in some places.
Absolutely. And within this ecosystem, organizations deploy specific career development support practices, tangible actions.
Right.
And the sources make a useful distinction here between practices aimed at fostering objective career success.
Like promotions, pay rises.
Exactly. Things like promotions, salary increases, external recognition, and then those focused on subjective career success.
Which is more about?
Helping individuals find satisfaction, meaning development opportunities, that internal feeling of success we talked about earlier.
Okay, so what are some examples of these different practices that companies might use?
The sources group them into a few categories. There are informational practices.
Giving info.
Pretty much. Providing access to knowledge, like effective onboarding for new hires, transparent performance appraisals, clearly posting internal job openings so people know what's available.
Okay.
Then competency developmental practices. These focus on building skills and capabilities.
Like training.
Formal training programs, yes.
Right.
Also supporting job crafting where employees get to shape their roles a bit. Succession planning. mentorship programs, special projects to learn new things.
Got it.
Then relational practices. These involve direct interaction and guidance.
People helping people.
Exactly. Coaching by managers or external coaches. Formal mentoring relationships. Dedicated career conversations.
Important conversations.
Very. And finally, career-related resource building. This helps individuals build their own personal resources for managing their careers.
Gotcha.
Things like career counseling services, training specifically on adaptability, providing support for personal career planning.
Okay, so those are the tangible ways organizations provide that support layer within the ecosystem. Makes sense.
They are, but, and this is a big but, the sources strongly imply, offering all this support requires a bedrock of ethical behavior.
Ah, ethics. Why is that such a critical component specifically in career development support? It seems obvious, but why emphasize it here?
Because career development inherently involves deeply personal information.
True.
It involves significant power dynamics between the organization and the employee, and the decisions made can have a profound, long-lasting impact on an individual's future and their well-being.
Yeah, the stakes are high.
Exactly. The sources frame ethical dilemmas here as situations where there's a potential for acceptable standards of behavior to be breached, or things could go wrong.
Okay. Based on the scenarios that were described in the source material, what kinds of ethical principles seem most vulnerable in this context? Where do things tend to go sideways?
The sources raise concerns drawn from those examples in several key areas. One is around the principle of voluntary consent, meaning, do employees truly feel they can opt out of certain assessments or development activities without facing negative repercussions, even subtle ones? Is it really voluntary?
Right, perceived pressure.
Exactly. Another big one is the lack of transparency. How personal data from assessments, performance reviews, even informal notes managers might take. How is it gathered, stored, used? Who sees it? How long is it kept?
Yeah, clarity on data use is crucial.
Crucial. There are also issues highlighted around the validity and appropriateness of the tools used for making significant career decisions.
Like, are the tests actually any good?
Are they reliable? Are they being used for the purpose they were actually designed for? Or are they being misused to make decisions they weren't meant for?
Okay.
Concerns also arise when individuals face negative consequences, like being denied opportunities based on information they haven't been able to see or challenge.
That seems fundamentally unfair.
It raises serious fairness questions. And finally, the sources point to ethical issues when employees don't have access to their own career-related information held by the company, or the ability to correct inaccuracies in that data.
So it really boils down to fairness, transparency, giving employees agency over their own data and career path, and using reliable methods. Is that a fair summary?
Precisely. The sources really underscore that failing in these ethical duties, well, it doesn't just damage individual trust, it can lead to legal problems and significantly harm the organization's culture and its reputation.
That makes absolute sense. Trust is absolutely foundational if you're trying to build any kind of supportive ecosystem like the one you described.
Yeah.
You kill the trust, you kill the system.
You really do.
So, wow, we've really taken quite a journey through this material, haven't we?
We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we've explored what personal career well-being actually is, understood different ways to think about a good career life, that hedonia-eudaimonia distinction. We identified the environmental factors and individual factors that set the stage for flourishing at work, and then saw the really impressive outcomes that follow when people do flourish.
The antecedents and the consequences.
Exactly. And we also delved into how organizations can build those supportive ecosystems and implement specific practices to help, all while recognizing that non-negotiable need for strong ethical conduct throughout the whole process.
It's all interconnected.
It really is. Hopefully this deep dive has helped distill these layers of information, giving you, our listener, a clearer, more integrated picture of a topic that is so inherently personal, yet deeply connected to the workplace environment.
Hope it's been useful.
So, to leave you with something to think about, drawing on the insights from these sources, here's a thought. Given that both individual actions and organizational support are necessary for career flourishing, and considering those ethical challenges involved, what does it mean for you to ethically engage with your own career development within the systems your organization provides? How do you ensure your own agency and well-being while also navigating the realities of that workplace ecosystem?